All right, everybody, welcome back to the Lions Pit podcast. I am your host, Nick Gomez. With me today is entrepreneur and former professional boxer, Mike Lee, and aspiring pro pickleball player.
There it is. Let's go.
Yeah, there it is. How you doing today, man?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me. I like the name of the podcast too, by the way.
The Lions Pit.
Yeah, it's really cool.
It's a biblical story.
Okay, tell me about it.
Yeah, I've gotten into it on a couple episodes. I haven't released any episodes actually, but it's the character Benaiah. He is the head of King. He works his way to become the head of King David's army.
Okay.
But what really starts him on that path is he pursues a lion into a pit on a snowy day and slays the lion. So it's one of these like lords, kind of like a David versus Goliath story where he like overcame these absurd obstacles. So whereas most people would have ran away from that situation, he ran towards it to pursue his destiny. So the whole idea of tackling these obstacles that most people would be afraid to. And that's the reason why I have guests like you on the show, or other fighters or other entrepreneurs as well, is to see like, what was the lion that you slayed to help you become who you are today?
Wow. I love that. I need to go back and read that story. I'm not a very religious person. I'd like to be. I grew up Catholic, but it's always awesome when you have some of those stories that kind of ground you in that faith. But yeah, I mean, I've had a lot of lions, and I continue to have lions. So that's a cool analogy. Because like I was just telling you before we went live, like every time before I stepped in the ring, I was scared. I was nervous.
Yeah.
I was excited too and prepared, but it doesn't matter if I was 0-0 or I was 20-0 and top 10 in the world. You're still that fear that you have of, am I going to lose? Am I going to get embarrassed? Am I going to get hurt? All these things kind of go through your head. And as I realize now, kind of stepping back and being retired for a handful of years, it's like, I used to be kind of ashamed of that. And now I realize like, it really wasn't about not being afraid. It was about like still being afraid, but like still pushing through. Right. Yeah. I think that's like the definition of courage when you hear a lot of that. So I think I was doing that many times, but not really knowing honestly how courageous I was being, because the fact that I was scared shitless and still kind of pushing through, because there's no sport, as you know, like competing and training fighters, there's very few sports where like you can't hide.
Yeah.
Boxing and martial arts, it's one-on-one, and you can't blame other teammates. You can't, blame the ref usually, but it's one of those moments where you're naked, you're exposed.
Yeah.
So it really you test your character, I think, in many, many moments. And that's why I think ultimately people love fighting sports.
Yeah. It's beautifully terrifying.
Exactly.
Like you said, there's nowhere to hide in there. But also you get to be the truest expression of yourself. And again, you can kind of pull back that mask of having to pretend to be like a civilized person in the normal world. Like you can be your raw emotional self in that ring. Obviously there comes control with that. You can't just go out there. I learned that in my first fight, my first amateur. I've only had 2 amateur fights, but my first one, every shot I tried to kill the guy. Like every shot was just a white knuckle, typical amateur fight for sure.
Yeah.
And it was cool because it was in the US Muay Thai Open in Phoenix, and big venue, two rings side by side. There's probably 500 or 600 people in the audience. And we're walking out, and like you said, every walkout is terrifying. And you've made far more walks than I have, but it's a scary scenario. But I'm out there, and what was cool is they had live scoring for the audience.
Oh, that's really cool.
Yeah, really, really a cool feature. I think more promotions should do that. But in the moment, and I don't know if you maybe felt the same way in your first fight, like I really felt like I was doing well, but I was like, I have no idea. Like I'm just like, so much anxiety and so much adrenaline. I was like, I feel like I'm doing well. I'm owning positions. I'm controlling the ring. I'm landing more. But I didn't know that I was up 2-0 on the scorecards going into the third, and I was just exhausted. The stool that was supposed to be in my corner was under the ring, and we didn't know that. So I didn't have a stool in my corner. And so I'm standing there for in between rounds, and again, every shot is a kill shot. So I'm just wasting so much energy.
Yeah.
And coming out for the third round, and I go to pick my arms up off the ropes, because Muay Thai fights in a ring like boxing, and I bring my arms off the ropes, and I'm just like, oh shit, I can't pick my hands up. So I ended up I was still on my feet, got TKO'd, and they were very clear. They're like, amateurs, as soon as we see you're in danger, we're gonna call the fight. Like, you guys have jobs, families, whatever to get back to. Like, if you decide to go pro, then you can push it a little further, but amateurs, we're calling them early. So in the moment, I was pissed. I was like, I'm still on my feet. I wasn't that rocked. I was just exhausted. But looking back at it now, like, I totally understand.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I felt that way with my last fight. My last fight, I fought for a world title, MGM Grand. I fought a kid named Caleb Plant, who was
Oh
the
yeah.
champion at the time, and the winner ended up fighting Canelo. And we kind of knew, since Canelo had the other belts, that was the path. But I was very angry at the ref for stopping that fight because I got knocked down. I slipped once, and then I got knocked down a couple times, and they were what I thought were flash knockdowns.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, looking back now, I understand that he made the right decision, and we have to go home to families, and it is what it is.
Yeah.
But yeah, I resonate a lot with what you said in terms of like beginning fights. You just come out with every shot is 100% power shot, right?
Yeah.
It's such an analogy for life in terms of like you got to learn how to slow down. You got to learn how to, get your positioning, your pacing, and not have every single shot an attempt to essentially exhaust all your energy, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that just comes with experience, man. I mean, there's so many martial arts boxing analogies to life, but that is one of the things that boxing did teach me is that like experience is everything, and getting hit, getting knocked down, losing, it's like all part of the process.
Yeah.
In fact, the earliest fights that I had where I did get knocked down, then got back up, I really felt like I learned more from those fights than I did from fights where I would just shut out or get a knockout.
Yeah.
Even though they felt a lot better. So yeah, it was a good long career.
Yeah. Yeah. What age did you start at?
I started fighting around 8 and then really got into it kind of late. I'd say around 16, 17. And then I turned pro right at 21.
Oh, nice.
So I definitely got like a late start because although I started at 8, I went and played a million other sports. And it wasn't until, maybe even like 17, 18 that I really started getting into it more and fighting the amateurs versus guys who start fighting the amateurs like at 8 or 6. So yeah, it was early. But like I was telling you before, I don't think I loved fighting. I loved competition.
Mm-hmm.
And so I became addicted to that competition in that one-on-one scenario.
There's nothing like it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because like I said, I played baseball my whole life. I played in, state championship high school games, playoff collegiate games. And, those were awesome. But as soon as you step into a ring with another human that has the same intentions that you do, and you don't know if they're feeling the same thing as far as like fear. I was terrified. My first fight with it being in a tournament, for whatever reason, I was way more excited because like there wasn't a face and a name that you're targeting, right? Is after everyone made weight, then they started pairing people together, and that's when stuff got real. But my second fight was at a casino in just outside of Albuquerque, New Mexico, and it was the biggest Muay Thai promotion in North America called Lion Fights. Like all the American legend Muay Thai fighters have fought for Lion Fights, and so it was a big deal coming to Albuquerque, and that was terrifying. It was so scary. Like I had to do so much mental work to prepare for that fight. Like physically, I knew that my training partners, I was training with people that were better than I'll ever face. In the gym, like weight room wise, I knew that I was doing everything that like world champion UFC fighters are doing because I'm writing the programs for them and then just doing them myself. So in that aspect, I knew I was prepared, but nothing really like gets you there for a fight. And so like stepping into that, like you said, stepping into the ring, that one-on-one competition, it's addictive, but it's also terrifying.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I mean, the thing about fighting is like the only way to get better is to fight, is to spar and train, right? So you can hit the heavy bag as much as you want. You could hit the pads. We did a lot of that, don't get me wrong. But like, if you really want to get better and test yourself, it's to fight because the pads aren't really hitting back and, the heavy bag isn't hitting back. And then learning how to control your emotions in that fight is really massive. So I think often fans kind of, maybe they do a boxing class or something and then they watch TV and they're super critical, but it's like, after going through it, I'm not critical. I mean, don't get me wrong. Like someone makes a bad pass in baseball or basketball or whatever, I'll be like, dude, come on.
Yeah.
But I also kind of know like, okay, I don't know what it's like in that moment. And the speed is so different. I'm sure you see too, like in the ring, the speed is very, very different than what people see on TV or even in training. It's a different animal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think so many people don't understand that about baseball.
Sure.
And my mom is a huge baseball fan, and we'll watch games and she'll be like, what are they swinging at? I was like, Mom, they have a fraction of a second to make up their mind. And out of that pitcher's hand, it probably looks like a strike and then it's a curveball, slider, whatever that's out of the zone. And she like gets so frustrated. She's like, you could have done better than that. I was like, probably not. I was like, no, I mean, I played college, but I was like, there's no way I could have done better than that. Yeah. But like I said, the speed is just different.
It is. It really is.
So you played a lot of sports growing up?
A lot of sports growing up, you know, and just kind of gravitated towards boxing later in life, but loved baseball, played hockey, basketball. Nice. And then since I retired, been playing a lot of pickleball, and then love like surfing.
Oh, nice.
So whenever I can get out of town, you know, obviously we're here in Austin now, but was living in California for the last like decade. So just fell in love with like surfing and pickleball now. Just a lot easier on the body.
Yeah, for sure. A lot more enjoyable.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, you don't have to, more often than not, you're not gonna end up in a hospital at the end of a pickleball game.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's rough. I mean, again, the fight scene is rough because you see these guys. And have you paid attention to any like bare knuckle boxing?
I have. I don't, man, I tell you, like the bare knuckle boxing and the slap fighting that I'm seeing, like I really don't like to watch it. It feels like very brutal to me.
Yeah.
More so the slap fighting. But yeah, I mean, I know, you know, there's good money in it, but it's really like UFC and just boxing that I'm watching for the most part. But yeah, the bare knuckle is kind of crazy. Those guys, I mean, they're really putting their lives on the line, you know?
I think it's the closest thing to gladiators that we have.
Yeah.
Because it's a true blood sport.
Yeah,
you can see a very good boxing fight where there's no blood drawn and it's just like a very technical fight. But there's not a bare knuckle fight that doesn't end with someone bleeding or broken hands or broken orbital, nose, whatever. Yeah. I mean, I went and watched, it was probably the biggest bare knuckle card they've had so far. It was in Denver, and the main event was Luke Rockhold versus Mike Perry, which are two big MMA names. And I think it was in the second round, Luke Rockhold gets his teeth shifted back. You know, he's like, nope, I'm done. Like he was done. It's like, yeah, that is bare knuckle. That is bone on bone, bone on teeth. Like it is nasty business.
Yeah, it is.
The slap fighting, I haven't got into it all, and it's wild because one of my friends and former clients, John Dodson, he fought for the 125 title in the UFC twice. And he's now, I believe, the 135 champ for bare knuckle boxing.
Wow.
Yeah, his wife just had a slap fight against Paige Van Zandt. And his wife's like not a combat athlete, but like, I don't know I mean, she's awesome. Her name's Chell. She's great. But I was like, this is so wild to me that she's doing it. And they fought to a draw. And I'm like, man, the slap boxing for me is like a little harder to watch than the bare knuckle boxing. Cause at least the bare knuckle boxing, there's still technique and there's still a lot of footwork and stuff that goes into it. But the slap fighting, like you put your hands behind your back and you just eat it.
Yeah, I know. It's aggressive. I really don't like watching it, to be honest.
Yeah.
It's pretty gnarly.
So you're from Chicago. Did you ever have any like big pro fights in Chicago?
I did. I had my pro debut there, which was great. It was right in the Allstate Arena. And then I won a junior world title belt, got me to, I think, top 5 in the world back at home. So I had a few fights at home, which was great because I had a good like home contingency. And then I went to school in Notre Dame in Indiana, so it was nearby. We put on one fight there, which was really cool.
At Notre Dame?
At Notre Dame.
Oh,
it was the first ever professional boxing match. I was signed by Top Rank at the time. And so we had a whole undercard and I was the main event. Regis Philbin was the like MC in the ring.
No way.
You had it was the night before a home football game. So Notre Dame was playing Michigan State. And big game. And so we had about 6,000 people there. I was the main event, like I said, and it was in the middle of the basketball arena. So that was really cool. It was kind of like a little homecoming for me. And the first ever professional boxing match I ever put on there.
It's such like a rich history there of sports in general. So to be the first boxing fight there is wild. Yeah,
it was really cool. Super grateful for it. And, you know, a lot of it had a charity aspect to it. Notre Dame's very much so big on giving back. So donated my purse and a lot of the ticket sales and stuff to a couple different charities. So we had like a lot of different elements in the mix and a lot of different people that helped us put that on. But that was cool. I think that was like my 4th or 5th fight. So it was still real early in my career. It's like a 6-round fight or something.
Okay.
So yeah.
Cool for that early to be in your fight career to have that big of or that meaningful of a fight.
Yeah, that was the thing. Like when I got signed, we wanted to sign with Top Rank because we knew they had such a big platform. And so early in my career, I had fought at Madison Square Garden. My second pro fight was at Cowboy Stadium. It was the undercard for Manny Pacquiao.
No way.
So I got to like be on these big stages very early on. And that's what Top Rank wanted. They wanted to like bring me along slowly, but also like expose me to these big stages. So I will say like later in my career when I had longer fights and fighting for belts and bigger, crowd sizes, I felt accustomed to it, because a lot of guys build their career up, in club fights and smokers and stuff like that. Then all of a sudden they're in front of 20,000 people. It's a different animal, trust me. So that was cool that I got to kind of be around on the undercard of some big, big fights, and like witness it and feel it. So, it felt a lot more comfortable once I got to that point.
You're kind of used to the song and dance.
It's a huge mental game. We did a lot of visualization.
Love that.
I had some great coaches and strength coaches and trainers, and then worked with a sports psychologist kind of early on, which was cool. And did a ton of visualization on what I wanted the fight scene, what the fight would look like, smell like, taste like. And so I got very good at, manufacturing that in my head. And it turned out to be really, really good, because I felt like when I got in the ring and finally started the fight, my heart rate was lower, cortisol levels were lower, and I just felt more kind of in tune, because I'd already gone there like hundreds of times in my mind. So getting to that point was, it took a long time to like learn that skill, so to speak. But then I got really good at it, and it was like a big tool in my tool belt, throughout my career.
That's awesome. And it is such a huge tool. Do you feel like you were ahead of some other fighters in that aspect?
I think so. Because, like I said, I got a late start. So there were a lot of fighters that had much bigger amateur careers. So for me, I had 16 amateur fights, and most guys had hundreds, or not most, but, some of the top guys. Yeah. So, I was kind of learning on the job to an extent. And so for me, I had to be like mentally ready and mentally understand. But, there were moments that really, really helped me. There was one fight later in my career, I broke my rib in the second round and ended up going, I think, 8 more rounds with a broken rib. And so that I attribute so much more to my mental strength versus anything physical. But, those kind of moments really tested me. And I think kind of preparing mentally really helped.
What turned you on to that, like mental training?
My first fight, I remember being so nervous I could barely feel my legs. And I gassed out early. Same thing. I was throwing bombs every single shot, and I still won. But I was like, I should have knocked him out. I won by decision. I just wasn't happy with my performance. And I remember telling my dad or my coach, I was like, I got to figure that out. So what got me into it was really kind of, let's call it like failing or just like not feeling comfortable in the ring. And that pain really led me to be like, okay, I got to figure this out. So I was training at the time in Houston, Texas, and there were a bunch of NFL trainers that trained at the area we were at. And I think one of them had worked with the sports psychologist. So I don't remember exactly who turned me on to him, but I started diving into that world and kind of learning more. And so I think nowadays it's prevalent everywhere, right? Like every NFL locker room, people understand the importance of the mindset. But this was, I turned pro in 2010. So it was kind of it wasn't as popular, and
for sure,
and definitely kind of seen as maybe taboo. And so, I met one guy in particular, and then just started working with different people over the years. And I just quickly realized that, like, okay, if a lot of my competition has more fights, more experience, maybe a better skill set or whatever, like what can I really focus on? And I really think that my mental strength and ability really, really helped, because I mean, I wasn't the strongest, I wasn't the fastest, I wasn't the most technically sound, especially once you get top 10 in the world, like everyone, they're monsters, they're killers, and they're all so good. And so I was like, okay, what can I control that I can change this outcome? And I really do feel like it helped, because like I said, I was on big stages, and I would notice, I mean, boxing and martial arts are such an intimate sport, right? So like you hurt someone, and if you have to be a great actor. And so even when I broke my rib, like I could have easily showed him my rib hurt. He could have kept going there, but I faked it and I masked it. And so I learned how to play that mental game, become a good actor. And I would be in the ring and I would notice the guys, like I remember Cowboy Stadium. I remember looking over at my opponent and seeing like kind of the fear in his eyes. And I didn't see that fear when we were doing face off or when, press conference or whatever. But, and maybe this is how I perceived it, but I got good at this, and I could tell like, oh, this moment's too big for him, you know? And I was nervous too. I mean, Cowboy Stadium's seats like 100,000 people.
Yeah,
like,
this is the new Cowboy Stadium?
The new one,
Yeah. Massive.
You know, massive. You feel like an ant walking out. But I do remember at times before that fight and during that fight that he was way more hesitant. And I could see in his eyes that, like, I noticed he was kind of looking around a little bit outside the ring. And that's when I was like, okay, like I won. I won this fight.
Yeah.
So I do think boxing kind of taught me a lot about that in terms of being an actor, using that to your advantage and reading people. And especially in fighting, like knowing when someone's hurt, when they're scared, when they're tentative. And I think that the best fighters in the world know how to mask that.
Oh, yeah.
They know how to overcome that, so to speak. Because that's scary. That one of the scariest moments in the ring is when you hit a guy with a shot with everything you got, and he's just still there.
Yeah.
And he's still staring at you.
And it doesn't look like it hurt him.
And it doesn't look like it hurt him. And maybe it did, you know, but you're just like, oh shit. That's the moment you know, like, my conditioning better be good because it's going to be a long night. But that's a mental game, man, you know?
Yeah.
And so quickly, if you start to doubt yourself, you get nervous or you let that moment take over, you'll get gassed out so quick. Yeah. So
it's so curious or so interesting to me, working with some of the fighters that I've worked with, to see how different fighters approach camp. Like, first fighter I ever trained, Claudia Gadelha, she was the #1 ranked contender in the world at the time for 115 in the UFC. And she didn't like to do anything like good for herself. Like, she didn't want to get massages unless she had to. Like, she didn't like do anything fun. She didn't want to enjoy camp because she wanted to take out all that aggression in the fight. And then you look at like John Jones. I used to work with John back in Albuquerque, and he's like, all right, this is like, let's celebrate this camp. And he wanted his coaches to work out with him too. And like, he just wanted everyone to be a part of it, but he wanted it to be as enjoyable as a fight camp can be. And so you said, like, coming out there and looking in their eyes and like seeing that moment's too big for them. I remember having that, my second fight, we had a face off, and the guy couldn't look me in the eyes at the face off. Like, he would like glance at my eyes and then kind of look at my chest, look at my shoulders, look up, look back, look down. And in that moment, I was like, oh, I got this. Yeah. That was the only moment I felt confident with that fight. But
that's interesting because I always look guys in the eyes that stare at weigh-ins and all that. But I saw Tyson once. Was it Tyson?
Tyson Fury or Mike Tyson?
Mike Tyson. It was either Mike Tyson. It might have been Mike Tyson. You know, Tyson was notorious for, like, he would like look you in the eye, like back and forth. But then I may be speaking incorrectly, but there were also fights where he just looked down at the mat. And so there were some times before the fight, you know, when you're in the middle of the ring and they're going over quick rules. Many times when I would just look down at his feet, because I almost was like, I don't even want you to see my eyes. Yeah. You know? So there's like different games that guys kind of play like that. Yeah. But once again, once the bell rings, it's like, it's a whole new kind of ball game. But to your point about like John Jones, I think I erred more on that side of, like, I used to always say, have fun, baby. It was like my mantra. I would always say, I would say it when I walked out of the tunnel or I was in the ring. I always performed better when I was having fun. Yeah. And so that's different for each person. Some people, like you'd mentioned, they want to be in the depths of hell, you know, and not to say I wasn't in the depths of hell in training camp, but like when I was having fun and laughing and joking, I performed better. Yeah, like point blank, flowing. So
flow and fighting is such a amazing feeling.
It's
like,
the best.
Yeah. I'm sure, again, you've had way more fights than I've had, but in sparring sessions when you're just like, oh, I'm just moving well and I'm landing what I want to land, and you're not even thinking about it. It's just, it's that's the feeling that you continuously pursue.
It's a great feeling. And I think even going back to that first fight, why I was so nervous and why I was just throwing so many shots, like, I thought I had to be Mike Tyson. I thought I had to be knock everybody out and just aggression and all that. And then slowly I started learning, like, oh no, having fun in this flow is actually like when I perform the best. So yeah, like anything in life, it's kind of finding, you obviously have people you idolize and people you want to look after and you mirror their ability, whether it's sports or not, but really finding what works for you, I think, is massively important. And it took me a while to not try to just copy people, but like take pieces of what they did and integrate it into my strength set, basically.
Very much fake it till you make it. Like you're saying, like you see someone, you're like, oh, I'm going to do that. Like John's the same way. Like when you're in the ring and the announcers there, I'm sorry, the referees there kind of giving you the rules. Like we talked in the locker room, gentlemen, blah. John's like looking down or like looking at the guy's chest. Like he's not an eye contact guy at that point.
Yeah. Neither was I.
Yeah.
It would get me out of focus. I feel like if you look in someone's eyes and maybe I looked off, like I didn't want to think about anything at that moment. I just wanted to be like, okay, heads down, hear it. Like, let's go to work.
Yeah. I like that.
Maybe my opponent saw that as me being nervous. I wasn't, but I mean, hell, 20 out of 21 times they were wrong then.
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
So
yeah. I wasn't nervous 20 of those times. That's funny. Yeah. It was like you said, you start to like early on, you kind of mimic like what you see other fighters doing or people that you respect doing. The difference between like Muay Thai and like a karate or a Taekwondo, as far as like kicking sports go, Taekwondo and karate are very like bladed stances, like kind of like boxing, right? You're like more bladed. Muay Thai, you're more squared up, and that's for like defensive purposes. You can like bring your leg up to check kicks and stuff like that. And it's also, as far as kicking sports goes, the most damage causing because it's not a point scoring system like Taekwondo or karate tend to be.
Okay.
And so for whatever reason, when I was warming up for my first fight, I was in like a super like Conor McGregor bladed kind of karate stance. I'm bouncing around. I'm like, what the fuck am I doing? I had never done that before, but as I was warming up for my first fight, I was like mimicking Conor McGregor because this was 2018. So like Conor was still very like, prevalent and in the scene there. So I was like, so weird.
Yeah. That's funny.
Yeah.
I found myself kind of doing similar things because you just grow up idolizing these guys. So you end up like, using little techniques or something.
Who's your guy?
I had a few guys. I loved Roberto Duran.
Oh, Manos de Piedra.
Yep, Manos de Piedra. You probably say that a lot better.
I'm half Colombian.
Yeah, I was gonna say in my gringo accent, I do my best.
It wasn't bad.
Thank you. I loved Canelo, which interestingly enough, I almost got a chance to fight him. It was close. I loved Andre Ward. We had an offer to fight him as well.
Nice.
With HBO that ended up falling through. That was when he, I think, came back. Let's see who else. I loved Sugar Ray Leonard.
Yeah.
And then definitely Tyson. Tyson was just like, for me, I was born in 87, so I was kind of like a kid in the 90s basically. So like Tyson and Lennox Lewis, just all those like 90s heavyweights, Klitschko's, which was kind of cool because like Lennox actually called my last fight. Because you go to fighter meetings, and right before the fight. And so it's kind of wild. Like you show up and there's, because I think it was on Fox pay-per-view. Yeah. But anyway, there's Lennox Lewis and there's like Jim Gray and all that. And so I remember sitting down at the, that's funny. I'll reverse real quick because I had a fight in Vegas. I was like my third fight. And Lennox was there in the crowd. I was an undercard. So like I was not the main event by any means, but I remember seeing Lennox Lewis at a pool party the next day and telling him, I'm going to fight for a world title one day.
Oh, hell yeah.
And it was the day after a fight. So I'm pretty sure I had some drinks in me. I'm like in my early 20s. My
you
friends
celebrate
around.
After that fight. Yeah, for sure.
Totally, man. And like, lightweight too. So I saw Lennox. I remember it was at Encore Beach Club and he was there and I went right up to him and I was like, Lennox, I fought last night. I know I saw you were there watching. It might've been Manny Pacquiao undercard. I was like, I'm going to fight for a world title one day. And he was like, yeah, sounds good. He was so nice,
That's good.
But probably also like, who is this kid?
Yeah.
Like, okay.
Oh, you were there?
I was like 2-0 or something.
Yeah.
And sure enough, I ended up fighting for a world title in Vegas and sat down at the fighter meeting and there he was.
Wow.
And so I reminded him.
I was going to say, did you remind him?
Yeah, right away. I was like, dude, you don't remember this, but like years ago. And he was like, oh, wow. Okay. He didn't remember.
Yeah.
Because why would
he? Was probably drinking too.
Yeah. Who knows? But that was like a kind of cool full circle moment for me.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
You spoke it into existence even at 2-0.
I did, man. I did.
Yeah.
I mean, when you get to that level, you have to have like an incredible amount of like unwavering delusion almost, because what you're trying to achieve is so insane and so like impossible, so to speak, that you have to have this like delusional confidence. And granted, it wavered at some times, but I really, for a lot of my career, I did have that. But towards the back end, I really started dealing with a lot of injuries, dealing with like autoimmune issues. My body was breaking down. I really fell out of love for the sport.
Yeah.
So I'd say the last like 4 fights in my career, like I wanted to retire after every single fight. And even the world title fight, as much as I like wanted to be there, in my heart, I was like, I'm so over this.
Yeah.
My mind mentally wasn't there. And it's really, I think it's why I lost. But you know, it's just such a damaging sport to you that like, I think I started really breaking down like 13-0, 12-0, 13-0. You just, if you're not feeling 100% mentally and physically, you can't play boxing, you know, you can't play these sports. Like, so I got to that level where I was much more afraid of getting hurt than I was losing. Mm-hmm. And it was the other way around in the beginning of my career. I was much more afraid of losing. I was like, I'll do anything not to lose.
Yeah, go out on your shield.
Stretcher, go on the shield. But when the pain started creeping up and I was getting older, then I lost that edge, man.
Yeah, camps get harder and harder.
Camps get harder. You just get broken down. And I finally got to a point I would walk out of, you know, a tunnel and be like, I want to win. But fuck, I hope I'm not in the hospital again tonight.
Yeah.
And once that like little seed of doubt creeps in, which it did a lot, I knew I was like, I need to be done.
Yeah.
Because I'm facing killers. I'm facing guys who are willing to die.
Top guys in the world.
And I used to be willing to die, and now I'm not. And so, yeah, that it was time for me to be done with it.
Yeah.
And get into pickleball.
Yeah.
Go pro.
Pickleball's great, man.
Yeah.
Pickleball's a good time.
I love it.
Yeah. I started watching boxing very early on. Again, didn't really have like too much exposure to it because like we didn't have a lot of like cable TV or anything at that time. But I would occasionally find myself like being able to watch some ESPN Classic with my dad, and we'd watch like Muhammad Ali fights, and I always really liked Joe Frazier. Yeah. And as much as like I'll be the first guy to say Muhammad Ali is the GOAT, Joe Frazier was like a guy that I more resonated with as far as like just being a grinder and the guy that was never expected to win or expected to be there. And then like I started watching more like documentaries and stuff on him, and like seeing that like how much it affected him when Philadelphia actually did build like the Rocky statue and not a statue of him. And everyone's like, that should be a Joe Frazier statue.
Yeah.
And man, Smoking Joe was just like a dog. But watched a little bit of boxing early on, and then honestly it was right around like the Lennox Lewis era is when I kind of lost interest in the sport. And I mean, I was also born in 87, so this was probably when I'm like, I don't know, 10, 12 years old is when Lennox Lewis is kind of starting to get into the scene. And I love the Klitschko brothers. I thought they were badass, just these big monsters of men. And are they still fighting? The Klitschkos?
No, one of them is like the governor or mayor of like Kiev or something. They're like in political
I think I have heard that.
But you're right, boxing did kind of like start to go down a little bit, and it is incredible how much UFC is really like taken off. Even though I still don't think they pay their fighters enough.
Oh God, not near enough.
Boxers still make more money than UFC. Like
it's wild to me.
Tenfold.
Yeah.
You've got guys who the general public have never heard of, you know, and they're making significantly more money than some of these UFC champions. So I don't know that world. I don't know, maybe because they're a publicly traded company and they have shareholders to worry about, et cetera. But I feel like these fighters need to be making a lot more money.
And that's a big, say what you want to say about Jake Paul. That's a big gripe that he brings up is like Dana needs to be, because Dana's a billionaire.
Yep.
Like you need to be paying these guys. And I am more on the side of, I think Dana's good for the sport, great promoter. I think on a personal level, he takes care of fighters that are good to him and treat him well.
That's what I've heard.
Because like Claudia, the first fighter I trained, she loved Dana. She had nothing bad to say about him.
He seems like a good guy.
Yeah, and I know John Jones like Dana. So, but you see some of these guys, because I forget how many fighters are with the promotion now, 600 or 700 fighters in the UFC. And there's only a handful that are making more than $1 million a fight. Some of these guys are like, I don't know how pay is for boxing, but like you have a guy that's like a early on guy that's like, they call him like a 12 and 12 fighter. You get 12 for show and 12 if you win. It's like, that's 12 grand. And then you have to give a percent to your corner. Yeah. If you have any other fees on top of that.
Yeah. And even the champions. I mean, I don't know, like what are these guys like, I don't know, Max Holloway or Justin Gaethje or, you know, what are some of these big guys making? Like maybe $1 million a night?
So Holloway in the last fight against Ilya Topuria, which was a couple weeks ago, their pay like for that card was made public. And I think Ilya and Max, I think Max made $2 million.
Yeah.
And Ilya made like 2 point something, like 2.3 or something, a little bit more because he's the champ. So you're, like I said, you're starting to see it a little bit more and more, but for the longest, like when I was actively working with John, I think there were maybe 4 fighters in the promotion that were making more than $1 million a fight. It was like John, Connor, Khabib, And honestly, I can't. There's probably another one or two in there, but
yeah. And I mean, it's just, but okay, Canelo is making 35 to 50 every night. Every time he steps in the ring, he's making that money. Tyson Fury, he's making 50 million plus. Anthony Joshua, these fights, especially in Saudi Arabia, these guys are making tens of millions of dollars.
Yeah.
And I get why Francis Ngannou, Francis could have made, I don't know, maybe 5-10 million in UFC. Why do that? Go fight AJ and Tyson Fury in Saudi and go make 100. Go make a serious bag. So I don't know. I don't know the ins and outs. And Dana seems like a good guy. And I have friends that are obviously in UFC and have been and trained and whatnot. But it feels like there's some type of like discrepancy in terms of like the top dollar amount. Because outside of the big dogs like Connor and, some of the outliers, I'm like, some of these champions, okay, they're making a couple $1 million, but like if they were boxers that had that much popularity, they'd be making 10, 15.
Yeah.
Sometimes. And it totally depends on different things. But anyway, I don't know.
Yeah, no, I think you're spot on. And even John had talked about that because for a while when Francis was in the UFC, there was a talk of that super fight of John versus Francis.
Sure.
One thing I've always loved about John is he wants to fight anybody. Like so he's fighting Saturday night.
I know, I'm excited for it.
Oh, it's going to be great.
He's back.
Yeah, I think, Stipe's a legend. He'll be a Hall of Famer when he's all said and done. But I think John finishes him early.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think
on the ground.
On the ground, yeah. I think it's going to be my prediction. If I had to like Nostradamus it, I would say second round TKO ground and pound. Like especially now that the 12-6 elbow is legal. It was illegal for a long time, but they just recently made it legal. I think John's going to cut him up on the ground, and I think the ref's going to have to step in. But
what made him so good?
John?
Yeah,
his mind. He's so different. He's so different when it comes to thinking. Very, very smart, very much a student of the game. And a lot of fighters are, but it is, he understands his greatness while he's in it. And I think some people don't. So he studies every fight. He has great coaches for sure, but he also has like, you look at like a Michael Phelps and you see him walking down the street. If you didn't know who he was, you'd be like, that's a kind of a goofy looking dude as far as his build goes. John has the perfect build for fighting. He has an 84.5-inch reach, which is tied for the longest in UFC history.
Wow.
Yeah, he also doesn't have a lot of meat on his legs, which some people think is a detriment, but it's like, I don't know, you're kicking more bone now. And he's one of the nastiest, like, creative strikers in UFC history. But he's also a junior college national champion wrestler. So his dedication to his craft is second to none. Working with some of the fighters I worked with, like I'll leave names out of it because I don't want to sound like I'm talking trash, but there was one fighter, UFC legend, Hall of Famer, bunch of accolades. And when I did his strength and conditioning camp, it was very discouraging. I was like, oh man. And it kind of became prevalent at that time. I was like, this is why you've been a career contender.
Was he past his prime or no?
A little bit. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, he was right at the beginning of the end of his prime.
Okay.
So training him and let's say I'll use broad jumps for an example. Say we're doing broad jumps in the workout. He's just doing bunny hops and just kind of going through the motions. And then you look at like a John Jones, who essentially has been a career champion. Since I think 23, he's been a
champion ever, right?
Yeah. And he's our age, so he's 37 now. So that's 14 years of him. I think he had one non-title fight in the last 14 years.
Jesus.
And that was when he came back from suspension or something.
Yeah.
And so he even with that behind him, say he jumps 8 feet on a broad jump. The next one he's going to try to get 8 feet 1, then 8'2", then 8'3". Like he is always trying to push himself. And I love seeing everything he's doing now online because he's taking more of like a holistic approach, and like he's doing the ice baths. He's paying more attention to his nutrition. Like he's doing the right things as far as being an older fighter now. But luckily also going to heavyweight, like you can kind of be an older guy and still be dominant. And so the big question now is if he's going to retire after this fight, because it's in Madison Square Garden. He's from New York originally. It's very much a legacy fight because you have the greatest heavyweight of all time in Stipe versus the greatest fight, arguably the greatest fighter of all time. And I think most people in the fight world would say he's the greatest MMA fighter of all time. So it's just this clash of titans. And it's unfortunate that Stipe is in the point of his career where he's at now. But having said that, as you know, the fight game is the fight game, especially with 4-ounce gloves. Anything can happen in an MMA fight. So I do think John will look good and dominate. I'm worried that he'll retire after. Because I think But also, like, if he retired, like, who's to say, like, oh, he went out too soon? Like, no, he's
37.
Yeah, he's 37, and he's had more title defenses or title fights than the other guy that comes up a lot in the GOAT conversation is Khabib Nurmagomedov. Johnson has had more title fights than Khabib had UFC fights.
Yeah. I mean, from a general view and a kind of mass public view with John, who outside of Ngannou does he have left to fight?
Right.
I mean, I'm sure you can name some great tough guys, but like if you walk down the street, I'm talking like mass appeal.
Yeah. Brock Lesnar.
Oh, how old is Brock Lesnar?
Right, yeah, that's the thing. But that's been like the fight for like 5 years that they
really?
talk shit to each other.
I didn't even think of that.
Yeah. That would be like the one mega like money draw fight. And again, I don't know what Brock's been doing for the last few years, but that was a fight like years ago. People like after, and this was John was still a light heavyweight, so 205.
Yeah.
And Brock's a guy that had to cut to the heavyweight limit.
Yeah.
That was a fight that people want to see, and John was all for it,
True.
and it just never manifested.
So yeah, that from a pure kind of like circus, I know it's a real fight, but yeah the Brock Lesnar thing, spectacle. Yeah, there's a better word. That yeah, you're right. And so it's like him or Ngannou, but like
do you know who Alex Pereira is?
Of course, yeah.
Yeah, so he's arguably one of the greatest combat athletes of all time. Because he is a multiple weight class champion in Glory Kickboxing, and he's just come in and has pretty much had his way with everybody in the UFC and just elite, like one punch end your night power. So that's a fight that John's actually really interested in.
At heavyweight?
Probably at heavyweight, yeah, because Alex can make it. Alex probably walks around the same weight that John does, honestly, right around like 235, 240.
Yeah, I don't know. I know every fight's different, but it's like he lost somewhat recently to
Adesanya.
Yeah,
not that long ago.
Izzy.
That was
so
that was a fight that I think Pereira like really realized like, okay, 185 is a tough weight cut. Because again, he's a guy that walks even when he was fighting at 185, he was probably walking around like 220. And so for him to like continue, and he's a tall guy, 6'3", 6'4" maybe, as is John. John's 6'4". It's one of those things like I think people want to see this. It's almost like a Street Fighter character, Alex, because he's like a Zangief or like a someone like that, because he grew up in this like obscure part of Brazil, like out in the middle of nowhere, speaks kind of like a different dialect of Portuguese than most of Brazil. So he comes out with like his war paint on in the weigh-ins, and he's very much like almost like a mythical character. Yeah. With this like ungodly, people are like, oh, his hands are blessed, and even maybe second to last opponent, Yuri Prochazka, who is very much a true martial artist and appreciates like that aspect of fighting. He was telling like Pereira, he's like leave the gods out of it. Like don't bring like any outside powers in this, because people think like Pereira is like blessed by these like Brazilian gods because he's just knocking people out left and right. Which say whatever you want, but it makes for an interesting story. Right. And John wants to fight him, and that would be a relevant fight in the UFC, because if Pereira wins, so say John beats Stipe, and that's the next fight is Alex versus John. Right. If Alex somehow pulls that off, which he very much could, because again, his hands can end anybody's night. He'd be a 3 weight class champion, which has never been done in the UFC.
Yeah, that's nuts.
Yeah, going from 85, 205 to heavyweight is
super impressive.
Yeah, Tom Aspinall is the kind of the boogeyman in the heavyweight division right now.
Okay. I don't even know who that is.
Young guy, I believe he's from England. He's an English fighter. Okay. Seems like a great like personality online, like watching him stuff and like hearing him in interviews. Seems like a guy you want to root for.
Cool. Is he on the card on Saturday?
No, I think he might be weighing in though as a alternate fighter. Yeah,
it's smart that they do that. Boxing doesn't do that really.
Oh, really?
Not really.
Yeah, because it is very smart. But Tom is a guy that I think like from the time he was like 8 years old, maybe started training jiu-jitsu, but he's massive. He's heavyweight, and has like super, super good boxing. Yeah. So people are like, oh, okay, that would be like the good heavyweight fight for John. But John's like, people say he's ducking him, which I don't know. I haven't talked to John about Tom Aspinall, but John's like, he's an interim champ, but he hasn't beat any like legends of the sport. He doesn't really have the resume that I'd want to, because at this point, John like, I want to beat Stipe. It's a legacy fight. And then after that, he's like, even if they're not title fights, I want entertaining fights. He's like, I want to fight Alex. I want to fight Derek Lewis, like people like that. And so like, I'm sure if Tom Aspinall had a more impressive resume, not that it's not impressive, he's a fucking heavyweight champ for crying out loud. But he just doesn't have like the hit list that some of these other guys have.
Yeah. I mean, the other interesting thing with boxing versus UFC is boxing cares about having the O on your record more than
It's a big
UFC.
deal.
It's a huge deal.
Yeah.
And maybe Floyd changed the game for that. And so there's this culture of boxing that, like, if you lose a fight, you're like kind of damaged goods, or you're just not as popular, where somehow UFC has flipped that on its head. I mean, some of its most impressive fighters have tons of losses.
Yeah.
Because styles make fights. Yes. And that's what people who don't know fighting don't know. And what that means, essentially, people that don't know fighting, is that every style is different. So just because I lose to a certain guy doesn't mean necessarily that, so I'm a worse fighter. It's definitely like a style matchup. So it depends who I'm fighting, what their style is. So anyway, long story short, I'm super impressed how the UFC has created this culture where record matters. And don't get me wrong, the undefeated matters, but it's not everything. Yeah. And in boxing, it's everything, and it's indexed way too hard. And I think it's kind of hurt the sport.
Yeah. I 100% agree with you, and I think you bring up an excellent point as far as like the UFC's been able to manage that really well, because you have some of these champions now. John, I think, is 27-1. His one loss was from an illegal strike that he didn't know was illegal. So it was the 12-6 elbow, which at the time was illegal. Now it's legal.
He got disqualified.
He got DQ'd.
They gave him an L. Yeah. Basically, yeah.
And the guy he fought, and I had this talk with Radio Raheem, but the guy he fought was deaf and
completely deaf.
I'm pretty sure.
Wow.
Yeah.
Good for him.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, to overcome that kind of obstacle. I think he was a collegiate wrestler, and that was like his shtick.
Yeah.
But John goes in there and is just pummeling the guy. And this was before John was a champion. This was very early in John's career, and it was still a UFC fight. And it was so nasty because one of the elbows that John threw didn't hit his face, but like hit his collarbone and like shattered his collarbone. But he ends up cutting him, and he throws the illegal 12-6 elbow. From what John told me, that he didn't know. I think the guy's last name's Hamill. I think it's Matt Hamill. I could be wrong about that. I don't know if is Matt Hamill the guy that played Luke Skywalker.
No, it's no. God, who is that? No.
Okay. Anyway, I digress. But anyway, so John was like, he's like, I don't think he wanted out of the fight. I just think with blood in his eyes and not being able to hear very well, he didn't know what was going on. But John was like, I don't think he wanted out of that fight, but through, whatever channels they ended up calling the fight because of the illegal strike. And John thought he won. If you watch you can even watch the fight now, and John's all smiles, like putting his shirt on, his hat on after the fight. Like he thought he won. He didn't know that it was a DQ. And he told me that was, understandably, as I'm sure you know, like that was like a very tough moment for him, having that first career loss, because he didn't have any amateur fights. He went straight pro.
Wow.
Yeah, which is also wild and kind of leads to the lore of John Jones.
Sure.
But Greg Jackson, who's arguably one of the greatest MMA minds, John always wanted to be like an undefeated fighter for Greg Jackson. Like he wanted to be Greg Jackson's greatest fighter, which he definitely is. He's obviously one of the greatest fighters of all time, if not the greatest. But he's like I went back in the locker room and cried. He's like, I felt like I let Greg Jackson down, and I was like, man, that's so wild.
It's funny you say that. When I lost my last fight, I went back in the dressing room and I was crying, and I was telling my team, I'm sorry. I wasn't sad for myself. I was sad like for them. I feel like I let them down.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know what that feeling is like all too well. I mean,
brutal.
It's brutal. I mean, because you become family with this team, and you train together, you work towards that goal, and you do your best, but yeah, you feel like you let them down. And they obviously don't feel that way, but
sure.
Yeah.
Did you ever change camps, or you kind of stuck with the same people your whole career?
I did. I started my career with a guy named Ronnie Shields, who is like Hall of Fame trainer. He used to train Evander Holyfield. He had Tyson for a couple fights, but has a bunch of champions. So, I started my first 12 fights with him, and then I had 2 or 3 fights, and still really close, like with Ronnie. It wasn't a bad break. All the trainers I switched wasn't a bad break. It was more me wanting to move to a different location and kind of like mix things up. Then I trained with Chris Bird. I don't know if you remember Chris Bird. He was a world champion. He beat Klitschko, actually.
Yeah.
I just loved his style, and he was in San Diego, and I had just moved out to California. And so I was with Chris for 2 or 3 fights, and then finished my career with a guy named Jamal Abdullah, who had Charles Martin couple other guys, champions, Charles Martin, who fought Anthony Joshua. And so he was around some big fights. And so I finished with him and my co-trainer, Julian Chua. And both those guys came close with. Julian's, became one of my best, closest friends. Julian he's got like 3 or 4 world champions now.
Oh, wow.
Young guy, but like Julian will be in the next decade considered like one of the best trainers alive.
Wow.
Hands down.
Where is he located at?
He's in LA.
LA. Okay.
He is one of the most brilliant boxing minds. I think he just didn't quite get his credit because he was so young.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, God, he might be like 32, 33.
Oh, he's younger than us. Wow.
Yeah.
Interesting.
He's a young kid. Filipino kid, Filipino American, fought as well, but then broke his hands. But obsessed with boxing and would help me spar as well. But yeah, he's I love Julian, man. Shout out Julian Chula.
Yeah, shout out Julian. Yeah, that's great, man. It's cool to like meet people like that along the way, and also to like catch him so young, because like I said, in the next decade, like he's gonna be it
without a doubt. And he studied under Freddie Roach. So he was kind of like a lot with Freddie at Wild Card, and then I was at Wild Card West in LA, and so that's how I met Julian. So yeah, and a lot of guys are like that. They kind of get that that mentorship.
Mm-hmm.
And then he just I want to say surpassed him, but just went off on his own. And it was really cool to see. You always see guys that are like true students of the game, like John, as you mentioned, it sounds like, and
mm-hmm.
those are the guys that really excel.
Yeah, John's big on like watching fights and like breaking people down. And what's cool is like if you watch a lot of his early fights, it almost seemed like he would find what his opponent was best at and then beat them at that. Like Chael Sonnen at wrestling, or Glover Teixeira, who is a legit black belt, but he like beat him in boxing. He submitted Vitor Belfort, who's a black belt. Like, so like it's one of those things where he was just such a force that was like, but like such a student. And I've seen him, and I've been in coaches meetings, and I'm like, this guy's very different.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
that's cool.
Yeah, but it's also interesting to talk. So Julian, did he ever compete professionally or even?
No, he didn't. He wanted to, but he broke his hands.
Oh, that's right.
You said he competed in the amateurs at a pretty high level.
Okay, because you look at like a guy like Greg Jackson, never competed. One of the best striking coaches, in my opinion, who's been in John's corner for the last decade, Brandon Gibson. He kind of took that path where I believe he studied under Mike Winklejohn, who's a big striking coach. And now he had kind of surpassed him as far as like who he's working with. So not Greg Jackson, Six Gun, Brandon Gibson, he has worked with some of the best fighters out there right now. And is continuously, like I said, been in John's corner, and I think he's John's head striking coach. So it's interesting, these guys that haven't competed, not Julian did compete, but some of these other guys that didn't compete but just became these like brilliant students of the game.
For sure. Yeah, even in boxing, I think it's rare for a great fighter to become a great trainer. You don't see that as often, but you definitely have guys who maybe have a little bit of amateur experience, or I think it does help that when they've gotten in there a little bit. I mean, even like yourself, just to kind of have that knowledge, even if you didn't turn pro, it's still the same feeling and energy. And you now kind of take that knowledge. You're like, okay, how do I now apply that? But yeah, that's a good point. I never thought about that, because there's some really good boxing trainers that never fought pro as well, or even really much of amateur. So yeah,
it's something that I didn't do like my fights to like get respect from fighters, but it's something that very much has like been
it has to.
Yeah. The guys that I've trained like really respect that I've been in there and I understand it. And even John, I remember one time one of his best friends and like right hand man in Albuquerque, he's a former NFL, or not NFL, sorry, he played at the University of Mexico, football player, and Tusa is his name, Samoan kid, or I don't want to say Samoan because I could be wrong, but he's like an Islander kind of guy, and we went to go watch him play in an arena football game for his birthday, and we walk in, it's John and all of his coaches, and he looked at me and he like looked at some of the guys, he's like, this is probably the most lethal crew I've ever like walked in with. He's like, even the strength coach fights, and I was like, let's fucking go. I was like, that's like quite a compliment.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was cool.
That's cool.
Yeah, like I said, it's definitely something that has earned me some respect, and it's been great, man. Have you ever thought about coaching?
Maybe. I mean, I just wanted to take such a break from the sport. It was such a huge part of my life that I wanted to take a break. So I don't know. I mean, maybe I get back in the sport to some degree, helping somebody out. But for now, just been focused on the business.
Yeah, you got a lot going on.
Yeah, my sister and I started a CBD and supplement line called Soul, and now it's turned into a microdose THC company as well. So
nice.
We have a lot of gummies. We're coming out the drink. We help with sleep, anxiety, pain, and that's been fun and really taken off since I retired. So I'm just really kind of focused on that more so than getting back into boxing somehow.
Nice.
Yeah.
Do you still love boxing?
I love it now. For a couple of years, I really was like, just over it. It's like it's all I did and think about.
Consumed your life for what, 20 years?
So then I got consumed by surfing for a while, and then even like pickleball. But now I find myself getting back into it in terms of like watching fights and like getting excited about fights coming up and UFC fights too.
Yeah. Big combat weekend.
I know.
What do you think of Tyson and Jake Paul?
I think that on one hand, what Jake Paul has done for boxing is great.
Mm-hmm.
On the other hand, I'm not that kind of guy in terms of like his, I don't want to say ego, just like the way he conducts himself. I'm not a fan of. I don't think kids should be like looking up to that.
Agreed.
And, I always wonder, like, he says he wants to be world champion. I respect that. He seems like he works hard, really hard. So I have respect for anybody that gets in the ring like that.
Sure.
And once again, I think he has like he's delusional, which is a good thing. I was delusional.
It's gotten him far.
Got you
far.
So I have a lot of respect for him. I know he puts his body and mind through, pain, but as a fighter and someone who got to that level, when I hear him calling out Canelo or talking about those world champion fighters, I'm like, you're nowhere near at that level.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's part of me that's like, you got to kind of earn your way. So it's a little bit of back and forth. And then the Tyson thing, it's like, fuck man, I don't want to see Tyson get knocked out. He's almost 60 years old. So it's like Jake's a strong kid and an athlete. And so I'm a little torn. I'm going to watch just because, dear God, I'm so curious, like a train wreck.
Yeah.
But I think Jake should win, but I just don't want to see Mike get hurt.
So that's Radio Haim. He was my last guest, and he was talking about how Larry Holmes should be seen as like more of like kind of on that GOAT level of boxer, but everyone remembered him for knocking out Muhammad Ali at the end of Muhammad Ali's career.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, is that what Jake Paul wants his legacy to be? Because people will always remember that if he knocks out a 60-year-old Mike Tyson.
I know. Maybe he does. And I don't know if Canelo would ever entertain that fight, but I mean, people who don't know boxing need to understand that, like, if he fights a Canelo or he fights a Beterbiev or a Bivol, like, no disrespect to the kid, to Jake Paul, but like, your night's over and you're going to get hurt.
Yeah,
like
those guys grew up in that culture.
Yeah, there's just like levels to this shit, you know, there's levels. And so once again, I got respect for some of the stuff he does. And respect
the work he puts in.
For sure. And him risking his life and going in the ring and all that. But I don't know. It starts
hard to take him serious.
Yeah, it gets a little ridiculous.
Especially when he has these kind of, and Mike Tyson is still a very, very dangerous person at 58 years old.
I'm sure.
But it's still a spectacle of a fight.
Yeah.
You know, like you said, he fought Tommy Fury and lost, and Tommy Fury was a reality TV show star in Europe.
Because I'm kind of like, if you're Jake Paul, like what's your goal here? Like, do you really want to become world champion? Okay, well, if that's the case, then you got to start fighting more like legitimate pro boxers and work your way up like anybody. Like, I didn't fight a killer my first few fights. Like, I fought a tall guy, small, southpaw.
But you weren't a killer yet either at that time.
Exactly. Yeah. So, you know, he is like kind of building up, but like where he loses credibility is like having these kind of spectacle fights where it's like, okay, do you want that? Or do you want to make a bunch of money?
Mm-hmm.
And if you want to make a bunch of money and get fine, then he's crushing it. He's doing great. And he's taking tougher fights. But like, if he really wanted to like become world champion, he should have 4 fights a year, go out and fight all these guys. And,
that are actual boxers.
Actual boxers, get to 20, 30 fights and like really get to 8 rounds, 10 rounds, like get that ability, fight all different, right? And that's how you got to do it. But I don't know. It's a new world, man. You know, and
it's interesting.
Yeah, it
for
is what
sure.
it is.
I mean, like I said, it's very admirable what he's done for boxing. I mean, he's brought it to the forefront as far as like people that weren't a traditional boxing fan.
Sure.
So again, it's brought popularity to the sport. People that weren't box fans before, or they just like watching Jake Paul on YouTube or on Disney Channel or whatever. Now they're watching him fight.
Yeah.
So that part's great. He's bringing a lot of money to it. I do like that he's calling out Dana to pay fighters more in the UFC. And kind of ruffling feathers there, because I think those are feathers that need to be ruffled. There's no like fighters association that are sticking up for these fighters.
Exactly. Same with boxing.
Yeah, and every time, and it's probably the same in boxing. Every time there's been talks of one, someone just comes in and stomps it out right away.
Yeah, the fighters don't have much leverage, really. You start to get leverage when you get to a point like Canelo, Floyd, Conor, where you start to dictate things. But to get to that level is very difficult. So coming up, you have such little leverage, and especially in boxing, there's like so much BS that happens and crime and Don King and all this stuff he's done. But like, it's not just Don King. I like all of them. Mm-hmm. Every single promoter has found a way to like screw over a kid, or, I mean, I was in it. I know. It's like, it's just who you want to deal with, And so it's the nature of the sport, so they don't want a players union. They don't want a fighters union.
Yeah.
Which I get. They want the control and they want the leverage.
Yeah.
So
another thing that Jake Paul is doing for boxing that I do like is what's the co-main event? Amanda Serrano.
Yeah.
Yeah, like the fact that he's like really bringing women's boxing, kind of like she's been co-main on like 2 or 3 of his cards now.
Yeah,
like, I think that's great.
It's awesome.
Yeah, I think that's great for boxing, and I think that's something that like is a kind of a genuine thing from him to do, because it's hard for me to tell. I'm like, how much of this is a character, and how much of this is genuine Jake Paul, or is that like he's just that guy, he's just that kid, and hard to tell, man.
It is, but I mean, the kid can crack. Like,
oh yeah,
he can fight. Is he at that level, like we said, with those top, pros or even top 10, top 20? I don't even know, top 50 in the world, like probably not. But hell of an athlete, and has gotten a lot better. And I see stuff where I'm like, oh, I'm impressed.
Yeah.
Considering how late he started. So yeah.
How much bigger is he than Canelo? I feel like there's a huge,
so much bigger, dude.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I feel like there's a huge size difference.
Oh
there.
My God. I mean, I was much bigger than Canelo, even though, I fought at 168. I came down one weight class. Normally I fought at 175, but I mean, I've never been around Jake, but Canelo is, 5'9" and probably
like my size.
Yeah, and probably walks around at, I don't know. Well, now he walks around a little heavier, but probably walks around like in the 80s.
Yeah.
And I think Jake Paul's like in the 200s and like 6'2" or something.
Yeah,
or,
big boy.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's kind of, I mean, Tyson has always fought people bigger than him. That's just the nature of his build and the beast of, the guys he's fought. Right. Which is, I think, lended a lot to his style of that bobbing and weaving. And the thighs on that guy. I mean,
yeah.
The way, and also and granted, I'm sure you've watched way more boxing than I have as well, but at least in my memory, I can't think of anybody that went to the body better than Mike Tyson.
Yeah, he's one of the best, man. He's definitely one of the best. Yeah, it's kind of a lost art. I think it was much more popular back in the day, but yeah, it's interesting too, because like the body shots end up paying dividends later on. Oh. It's like one of those things where you put in that work early on, and then you start to see like later on them deteriorate, or vice versa.
Lower their hands.
Yeah, or you're like, why am I so tired? In like round 6, and you're like, oh, because I took those body shots that like at the time you're like, no big deal.
Yeah.
So yeah.
You ever finish a fight with a body shot?
Oh yeah, for sure.
So my second fight, knees in clinch, I kneed him in the body. I broke a couple of his ribs. It was like such a rewarding feeling to like drop someone with body shots.
Yeah. Yeah, it really is.
Like you said, it kind of is a lost art. And like even one of my good friends, Kyle Howard, he's a MMA striking coach over at 10th Planet. I was having this talk with Lucas Salame, and because Lucas he likes to watch fighting, but he doesn't know if Lucas.
Yeah.
No.
Like, oh, okay.
No. He's done a little bit of jiu-jitsu in the past.
Cool.
But when I was doing, because I did some strength and conditioning work with him for like 2 years, nice. Maybe a little longer with Lucas. So we'd always mess around and kind of like play spar. And I would always tell him, I'm like, man, body shots are just sexier. And one day, like Kyle was walking through on it, and I was like, Kyle, come over here real quick. And he's like, yeah, what's up, man? I was like, what would you rather do? Finish someone with a knockout or a body shot? He's like, body shot all day.
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
That's the one thing, like you kind of said, like you can hide some pain in a fight. Right. You eat that liver shot, like you're it's crippling.
And
you can't hide that.
That's the thing too, that a lot of fans don't recognize. If you haven't been in the ring, got hit with one of those shots, that they think that the fighter isn't being tough or right. Cause like the headshot you can see and it's like brutal and guys get knocked out, et cetera. But like those body shots where guys go down and you're like, get up, like, you know, yelling shit at the TV. It's like, bro, you literally can't feel your legs. Like, I don't know how to explain it.
It's crippling.
You look fine, but on the inside, like you're dying.
And yeah, right. And then it doesn't even have to look like a big shot. If you just catch someone like in between breaths or something, like
exactly.
Look at Ryan Garcia.
Yeah. Exactly.
Right. Like that, he ate that body shot, and it was like a delayed, but man, nasty.
I saw that right away. Yeah. You know what? And it's like the culture of, you know, like Mexican fighters. Mexican fighters are known just as like a certain style and tough SOBs. You know, it's like Julio Cesar Chavez, and like they have this legacy of like machismo and being tough, right? I fought some Mexican fighters that like I hit them with everything I got, and they were just like, okay, like standing right in front of you. You're like, damn, bro, like. So
different.
I think it's tough for Ryan Garcia too, like being Mexican American and getting a shot like that. Like I think, you know, a lot of Mexicans were probably like, get up, you know. But A, you don't know how much pain he's going through, and B, it's kind of a different. It's become a different world, and I think Floyd made it apparent where it's like the game now is make as much money as possible and don't get hit. You know, because when you retire, no one cares about you for the most part. So like,
there's no pension.
I don't blame these guys where they're like Ryan Garcia, where it's like, and I'm not saying he quit. Like I'm not saying that whatsoever. But like in general, it's like be defensive, be tactical, be smart, get the most for your money, and try to get out with all your faculties. Yeah. So yeah.
Ryan Garcia had a hydration clause in that fight, right?
He did against Cervante, yeah.
Yeah, he couldn't like weigh in at a certain amount or something.
Yeah, they do a lot of that with catch weights and boxing.
Yeah, I think that had to. Oh, you did?
I had one in my title fight. I had to be 10. The morning of, I had to be within 10 pounds of what I weighed.
Oh wow!
So what weighed in 168 or a little under. I had to weigh under 178 the morning of. Did another weigh in, and then at that point I could eat and drink whatever I wanted.
Wow, man, that's tough.
Yeah, that one sucked.
Yeah, I bet.
And I think, I'm not making excuses, I lost. He was a better fighter, but also was kind of tough for me. So
yeah. When I fought in the U.S. Muay Thai Open, with it being a tournament, if you made it to the championship fight, you had to re-weigh in at your initial weigh-in weight.
Oof, no,
yeah, disgusting, dude. Because I treated it how I would have trained an MMA fighter. So I had probably like an 8 to 10 pound water cut, like the day before weigh-ins.
Sure.
And like going into the first fight, I think I put all my weight plus maybe a pound or two back on. So I weighed in at 148, and the morning of my fight, I think I was at 163. And I was like, there's no fucking way I could do that weight cut again. Like, and if I had to do it, because so weighed in on Friday, fought on Saturday. If I would have won, I would have had to fight again on Saturday, and then potentially 2 more times on Sunday, and you have to weigh in before the championship. I was like, there's no fucking way I could have made that weight cut in like a 36-hour span, like doing it twice.
It's fucking brutal. I don't miss that at all. I'm probably like 215 pounds. Like,
nice.
And granted, I want to lose some weight. Really want to get back more into like working out harder. But yeah, the weight cut, man, I don't miss that.
That's what I feel like fighters like not necessarily train for the weight cut, but like so much of the camp is the buildup for that weight cut. And then once you do that, like I would always tell fighters like, all right, you made weight, time to have fun.
Yeah, true to an extent. But then, as a strength coach, like if I come into camp and I'm already 30 pounds overweight, like it's like, okay, well, the first half of this camp is about losing weight, not getting better. Yeah. You got to like 100% like go have fun. But like I would blow up too much. And then I quickly corrected that. But there were a few fights where I had too much fun afterwards.
Yeah.
And then it's like, I don't want to come into camp like this fat slob, where it's like fat camp and then we box.
Yeah, fat camp is what we call it for our fighters that come in heavy. That's funny.
So I got better at that as I went in, where I was like, all right, I'm in a good enough shape that, I haven't peaked yet, but like we're not trying to like do fat camp.
Yeah. And that's what we would always tell fighters, like stay in shape so you don't have to get in shape.
Yeah.
Because we would have fighters that like, and again, as a strength coach, we're not involved almost at all with like nutrition. Like a lot of fighters have nutritionists or whatever the case may be, or their head coach deals with it. Like we're just in the weight room with them. But there'd be times where we'd have fighters like miss weight and we're like, fuck, that almost looks bad on us as like strength coaches. Even though again, that has nothing to do with us.
Sure.
But yeah, that was like the tough and interesting thing to deal with fighters. And
it depends on the dynamic though. Like, I think that, you know, it also depends what level you get to, if you can afford this and whatnot. But I had some strength coaches that did help with nutrition, and you're right, some that didn't. But it's always this like, whose fault was it when the weigh-in happens? I had, you familiar with Andy Galpin?
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm. Dr. Andy Galpin. Yeah. I'm a big fan.
Yeah, he's awesome, man.
Yeah.
I love Andy. He was in my corner for my last fight.
Badass.
Yeah, so had Andy throughout that entire camp, and worked with him a little bit before too. But that was really cool because seeing him at such a high level and understanding just the body to a level that I'd never really dealt with. I had some other great strength coaches too, but it was just funny because he'd be like, yeah, I think you're going to wake up at like 172 today or 172.5. He was just so spot on with like everything he did. And even though I had to go down to a weight class that I'd never been down to, it actually wasn't that tough.
Yeah.
And I really credit Andy to that, dude. Nice. I would have been shit out of luck without Andy on
brilliant.
that fight. He's awesome.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of him. I've never met him, but like I do follow him online and I've listened to a couple of like his podcasts. Gosh, I forgot. He has a podcast with another guy that I really like. I can't think of his name right now.
Oh, Dan Garner?
Yes. Yeah.
I did some nutrition stuff with Dan too.
Oh, nice. Yeah, that's a great team to be doing work with for sure.
Yeah,
those
really
guys know their business. Because there's some guys that have been in MMA or other combat sports that like kind of got in before like more scientific stuff got into the game.
Right.
That washed out pretty quickly, like once smarter minds started coming in. But it was one of those things like because when I very first started thinking about training fighters, I was like, oh man, I gotta bust their ass in the weight room. Like we really gotta get after it. And then it's like, no. These fighters are killing themselves enough in the ring or in the octagon or whatever that like we need to optimize their movement, work on like force delivery, force absorption, and make sure that they're like structurally strong in positions they're gonna find themselves in.
Yeah, the strength coaches have to kind of put their ego down.
Oh yeah.
For sure. Because it's like the fighters aren't trying to become the best at lifting weights and the best at running, right? So you're exactly right. It's got to be things that complement the actual fight game. So
yeah. All right. So I do want to get into your company Soul because I've always been a big believer in cannabis for athletes, and especially coming from the very extensive combat background that you have. But even me on the baseball side, one of my friends in high school, I played on a traveling team with him, had a pretty extensive elbow surgery, Tommy John, and got hooked on pain pills, and before he was 20, he OD'd. And it's one of those things that, again, I'm sure especially in combat sports, you see these guys get on these pills that are prescribed by doctors, by professionals, telling them like, hey, start taking this for your pain. And it ends up going down such a dark route. And even Brett Favre was addicted to Vicodin for a while. And so for me, more so when I started getting into the world of combat sports, I started to see a lot of value in CBD and cannabis in general. So to see that you are very much taking like an athlete-centered approach to it, and coming from the athletic background that you have, like I'm curious, like what made you want to get into it?
The exact reasons that you mentioned. I got to a point in my career where I was dealing with a lot of pain and was on painkillers, and just it wasn't the solution for me. And I was on way too many medications. And so I started looking into like natural solutions to that. And it really opened up my mind of like functional medicine and just understanding everything that goes into our bodies mentally and physically. And so I discovered CBD as an alternative for anxiety and for pain, and then THC as well. And I wanted to kind of spread the message. And so my sister and I started the company a few years back, and it really kind of started as like a little side project. We didn't have any like grand ambition of becoming what it's become. And we just wanted to help people, and we absolutely loved it. And there was like a core mission around it. Like it truly helped me get off of some medications that I was on. And so I knew that, I wanted to spread the message. And so I think to your point, I don't want to demonize the pharmaceutical world, because I think that there's many times when it helps.
Yeah.
But for the most part, I just think we're way too overprescribed. And I felt that on a personal level, and a lot of friends felt that in terms of the painkillers and whatnot. So I just think you should add more things to your tool belt. And so that was really the genesis of the company and why we started it and the mission. And it's just been awesome to kind of spread that. And now we have a whole range of supplements, all of it organic hemp. And so since it is hemp, we can ship to all, 50 states.
Yeah.
Mostly there's a couple states we can't. But it's been a really cool journey to see people and like the testimonials come in of like, this saved my life. Oh my God, I'm sleeping now and I could never sleep. My husband is a different person, like in a better person. Like we get hear all these testimonials and it just, it makes my day. I mean, we've got like over 10,000 5-star reviews now. And,
wow.
It's really grown to such a beautiful thing where we have such not just a brand, but a community.
Yeah.
And I'm grateful that, I get to sell something that helps people and I get to be a part of a business that helps people. And so.
And genuinely help people.
And genuinely.
Yeah. I mean, not a Band-Aid. Like this is like showing true positive effects on people's lives.
It really is because, what CBD and THC and other cannabinoids are doing is activating the endocannabinoid system, which affects everything, so many different mechanisms in your body and most important, your nervous system. And so often when you're calm and you're out of fight or flight and you're in parasympathetic and your nervous system is calm, rest and digest, you can heal. So it's so interesting that like it helps with anxiety, it helps with sleep, it helps physical pain. It's like there's so many of these things that it helps with, and it's really because people are finally able to kind of like calm down.
Yeah.
And so, being at the forefront of that and dealing with all the headwinds and hurdles that we have to deal with being in this category has been tough, but it's been very fulfilling.
Yeah.
And it's been a really cool thing for me to step into post boxing.
Yeah, I can't imagine how rewarding that is for you because again, it's true help for people and it's true medicine for people, and it's getting them off something again that might be covering symptoms of pain, but has very addictive side effects to it, that can again be detrimental and be devastating to to families, not just a person. This could ruin people's lives and their families and relationships. And not all pharmaceuticals, like you said, it's not. I don't want to demonize pharmaceuticals. Although I am much more on the side of like plant medicine when it comes to that kind of stuff.
Sure.
But yeah, it was funny because back again when I was working with a lot of fighters in Albuquerque, I had a buddy that knew a grower up in Humboldt County in California, and he kept he kept trying to tell me like he's like, hey, let's start something. Let's start like a company and then get a lot of these fighters on. I was like, yeah, because it'd be so perfect to go with the sport, because I haven't had a ton of experience with like pharmaceutical painkillers, but I've had a couple surgeries. I've had my wisdom teeth removed, but the one time I had 2 surgeries on my thumb from baseball. That I would take medication the day of, like I'd get out of the surgery, but after that I wouldn't take it anymore. I just did not like the way I felt. But the one time I really noticed it was I developed senior year of high school. I developed this really bad cough, and I was prescribed cough medicine that had codeine in it. And I was just so angry, and I respected my dad and borderline feared my dad because he's just that presence, but like a good man. And I remember I was trying to hook up, like, you remember the old, like the yellow, red, white, like blue plugs you plug into a TV, a DVD player?
Yeah.
And for whatever reason, it wasn't working. And my dad was like, what's going on? Like, why is this taking so long? And I just snapped. And I was on this cough medicine. And I remember like for no fucking reason, I turned to yell at my dad and I was like, I want to fucking die right now. And my dad just like, I had never talked to him like that. I had never expressed any sort of like suicidal thoughts. But in that moment, I was like, God, I just want it to be over. And my dad was like, took a step back and he called my mom. He's like, Margaret, you got to deal with your son. And because he didn't, being of that older generation, he didn't know how to deal with that. But it was one of those, I felt so bad for like speaking to my dad like that and even like expressing those thoughts. But it's like because of this medication I was on, I was having those thoughts. And I don't think I've taken anything since. That was my senior year of high school. That was 2006. I don't think I've taken like Vicodin, Percocet, anything like that since then.
Yeah.
And again, I've been a very big believer not only in plant medicine but specifically cannabis.
Yeah.
I think it's phenomenal.
Yeah, I think it helps a lot of people in a lot of different ways. So like anything else, like I don't think people should be consuming a lot of it before they're 21. But it's one of those things that really has helped people. And I've had a lot of similar experiences with tramadol, with the Vicodin, which with the painkillers, it just can be a really dark road, and putting a Band-Aid on something. So yeah, it's been awesome. It's been a lot of fun, and the company's growing, and we get to help people, and it's been really fulfilling.
Yeah, and cool you get to do that with your sister and share that experience with her.
Yeah.
Is it just the two of you?
It's just two of us, but then I hired my mom as well.
Yeah.
So it's definitely a family business. Yeah, it's been really, really cool as we've kind of like grown and had, growing pains along the way of running the business, and a lot of ups and downs, but it's also kind of given me a whole new purpose too post boxing, which has been great. Like I had such identity and purpose in boxing, and so now I can have identity and purpose here.
That's amazing, because and especially in the fighting world, so many people struggle with that, like purpose past fighting.
Oh,
athletes
for sure.
in general, like once they're retired from their sport, like have a hard time with that, as you know.
Yeah.
So to be able to find that purpose in something that is genuinely helping a large amount of people is amazing.
Yeah. I mean, nothing will ever really fill that cup, that feeling. But it's important to find something that you can like sink your teeth into, for sure.
Yeah. I still like toy with the idea of having one more Muay Thai fight.
Yeah. Right.
Just because again, nothing fills that cup, that feeling of stepping into a ring. But I do find a lot of purpose in my work and being a strength and conditioning coach. Because yes, I work with a lot of athletes, but I have a lot of like Gen Pop clients too, and I've had a lot of like knee replacements or like clients that were like elderly. I've had weight loss clients.
Yeah.
So those things and those parts, like helping someone lose weight for a wedding, or they have a kid coming and they realize that they want to be around longer for their child. It's so rewarding, and it's great getting a fighter to their event or getting an athlete to their event.
Yeah.
But like creating lifelong changes in people is, as you know, is just totally different.
Yeah, it's really cool.
Yeah. So 2 quick questions before we call it.
Okay.
Favorite venue you ever fought in?
Madison Square Garden.
Yeah.
Just
The
iconic,
Mecca.
man. The Mecca. Like coming down that tunnel and just feeling like, what am I doing here? But also like I was so young and early in my career. Yeah, the Garden.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I saw a UFC fight there last year. It was phenomenal. Yeah. And that was my first time out there.
Yeah.
It was great.
It's cool.
Second question, toughest fight you ever had in the ring?
Well, I mean, the fight before my last one, I won, but it was toughest. I fought a guy named Jose Ramirez, and we fought for a junior world title to get me in line to fight for the world title. The next fight, I think that was the toughest because I broke my rib in the second round, and we talked about that earlier.
Yeah.
And so having to go through that with the broken rib and spending all night in the hospital, that was the toughest fight I ever had. It was the worst pain I ever experienced, and oh my God, it took everything I had to get through that. So yeah.
You broke it early in the fight, right? You said second round?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was like either first or second. I think it was second round. I had injured it in camp, and I knew,
so it was already compromised going in.
I knew it was compromised.
Yeah.
So and you're not going to pull out of the fight.
No.
Like I never went into a fight 100%.
I don't think most fighters do.
Yeah, you never do.
Yeah.
In fact, if you do, you're almost like, oh God, did I train hard enough?
Right. Yeah. I think the unfortunate side of the MMA is a lot of fighters will go into their fight with an injury, hoping to get the promotion's insurance to cover it. Like they won't tell people that they've already torn their ACL, but then say they tore it in the fight.
Yeah.
Because like you said, MMA doesn't pay well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
True.
Cool, man. Well, again, I appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Let's tell the people where they can find Soul. Tell the people where they can find you. Are you guys in any retail stores right now? You guys just online?
We were, but now we're pivoting entirely to online. But it's getsoul.com.
Okay.
And we have a sister brand called Out of Office, which the shirt here.
Nice.
It's all our THC products. It's all on the website.
I'm gonna have to try some.
Yeah, I brought some for you, man.
Oh, hell yeah. Let's go. Thanks, man.
Yeah,
best guest I've ever had.
There you go, dude. I brought our single dose. So it's small amounts, 1.5 milligram THC.
Okay.
With some CBD and some other cannabinoids, but it's a great blend. So yeah, getsoul.com. And then my Instagram's at official Mike Lee. Souls is at get.soul. But yeah, getsoul.com and go check it out.
Hell yeah. Thanks, man. I appreciate you coming on.
Thanks, man.
Cool. All right, everyone. Thanks for tuning in to the Lions Pit podcast. Again, I am your host, Nick Gomez. With me today is Mike Lee. Shout out to LSKD for providing me with this phenomenal workout gear. Shout out to Soul. Tune in next time, guys.